I've been driving for a rideshare company for a few years now, usually working late night shifts. The roads are quieter, the pay is better, but sometimes, just sometimes, you pick up a passenger you wish you hadn't. This story is about one of those nights. That evening started like any other. I was cruising in my old but reliable 2005 Volvo, enjoying the stillness of the nearly empty streets. Around 2 a.m., I got a request from a convenience store nearby. Nothing unusual, until I got close. The place was completely dark, obviously closed, and not a single car was in sight. A strange feeling crept up my spine before I even saw the guy. He was pacing outside, wearing a tattered hoodie that looked like it hadn't been washed in years. His movements were jerky, like he couldn't stay still, and he kept glancing over his shoulder like someone was following him. Everything in me told me to cancel and drive away. I hovered my finger over the cancel button, but for some reason, I didn't press it. The moment he slid into my back seat, I regretted it. He didn't pull out his phone or look out the window. He just sat there, staring at me through the rearview mirror. His gaze was unsettling, intense, and unblinking. I turned on the radio to break the silence, but he snapped at me to turn it off. His voice was deep, scratchy, definitely a smoker. Then he spoke again, asking if I'd ever picked up someone I shouldn't have. The question hit me like a brick. I let out an awkward chuckle and said I hoped not. He didn't react, just leaned back and muttered something under his breath. The ride grew even more disturbing when he started talking about his past as an Uber driver. He claimed he quit after some passengers stole from him, but the way he smiled through the entire story made my skin crawl. Then he said something that chilled me to my core. "It's funny how much trust you put in someone sitting right behind you." At that point, I wasn't just uncomfortable, I was afraid. My pulse quickened as I kept my eyes on the road, silently praying for the ride to end. The man kept rambling, slipping into a strange, apologetic monologue. He started whispering that he was a bad person, repeating, "I didn't mean it," over and over again. We were only a few minutes from his stop when he suddenly shouted that I had missed a turn. I knew I hadn't. My GPS confirmed we were on track, but fear took over, and I hit the brakes. He demanded that I pull over. My hands were trembling as I shifted into park. Then, out of nowhere, a pair of headlights appeared behind us. A police car. The man slumped down in the back seat, trying to make himself invisible. I turned slightly and saw him lying flat, eyes shut tight. My heart pounded in my chest. Then, without a word, he sat up, muttered, "Guess you got lucky," and slipped out of my car. A few weeks later, I saw a news article about a convenience store robbery that happened the same night, just 2 blocks from where I picked him up. My stomach turned. I had unknowingly let a criminal into my car. He could have done anything. Since then, I've been much more careful about the passengers I pick up. I used to love the city, the noise, the energy, the constant movement. But after going through something traumatic, the sound became unbearable. Even the slightest noise would send my nerves into overdrive. My psychiatrist called it phonophobia. I just called it hell. That's why I moved to a secluded cabin deep in the Pacific Northwest. It was exactly what I needed. No traffic, no loud neighbors, barely any cell service. Just peace. The first week was blissful. Mornings were filled with birdsong instead of honking horns. Nights were silent, except for the wind brushing through the trees. I felt safe. Then, one evening, I heard a knock at my door. It was my closest neighbor, Michelle, an older woman with piercing blue eyes and long, graying hair. She handed me a basket of preserves and said something that stuck with me. "Always keep your lanterns full, your windows shut tight, and your wits sharper than your axe." The way she said it, it didn't feel like advice. It felt like a warning. That night, a rare thunderstorm rolled in. As I sat reading by candlelight, a loud banging rattled my door. I jumped. It was Michelle again, drenched from head to toe. She blurted out that she'd seen someone near my woodpile. Alarmed, I stepped onto the porch and shined my flashlight into the rain. Nothing. She kept glancing at the woods like she expected something, or someone, to appear. Then, without another word, she turned and disappeared into the storm. As soon as I closed the door, something about her story struck me as wrong. If her cabin was 10 minutes away, how could she have seen someone outside mine? Had she already been on my property? Hours later, just as I was starting to drift off, a branch snapped outside my bedroom window. My stomach twisted. Slowly, I crept to the window and peered out. Michelle was standing at the edge of the trees. She wasn't facing my cabin. She was looking away, standing unnaturally still. I ducked down before she could see me. When I finally gathered the courage to peek again, she was gone. A little after midnight, there was another knock at my door. But this time, it wasn't Michelle. It was a large, bearded man with a menacing presence. Terrified, I locked myself in the bathroom and called the police. Moments later, I heard my front door crash open. Glass shattered. Furniture toppled. I held my breath, heart pounding. But he never came into my room. By the time the police arrived, the intruder was gone. I begged them to check Michelle's cabin. They did. It was abandoned. Had been for years. To this day, I don't know if Michelle was trying to warn me or if she was part of something darker. But I do know this: I'll never live in the woods again. For 3 years, my girlfriend Catherine and I have had a Christmas tradition, spending Christmas Eve with my family, then driving through the night to her parents' house. It's a peaceful, empty road, just the two of us and our favorite music. This past Christmas, that drive turned into a nightmare. Around 1 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I ignored it. A few minutes later, it rang again. Still unknown. Then, a third time. Frustrated, I picked up, ready to tell whoever it was to leave me alone. But all I heard was silence, until a man's voice spoke. "Hello, Luke." My grip on the wheel tightened. Then he started listing details about me. My full name, my address, things only close friends or family should know. I managed to ask what he wanted. His response sent ice through my veins. "I'm not here for you. I'm here for Catherine." Catherine went pale. I pulled over, my mind racing. Who was this? How did they know where we were? Before I could react, Catherine snatched my phone and hung up. I yelled, demanding to know why. She just whispered. I didn't want to hear what he was going to say next. The number never called back. I still don't know who he was or how he knew so much about us. But I do know one thing: he'll call again. And next time, I might not be able to ignore it.